Hey everybody, welcome to yoga. My name's Carlin. Before we get started with today's practice, please make sure you like and subscribe to my channel so you can get more free yoga videos of lots of different styles. Today our class is going to be yoga for relaxation, so it'll be more on the restorative side. Typically when I teach a restorative class, we hold poses for 5 to 6 minutes. However, this class was designed based on a restorative yin yoga routine that I like to do in the mornings when I typically don't have as much time. So we're going to hold each of the poses for about 1 to 2 minutes, which depending on the pose can be really short or feel like an eternity. So we're going to use props today to make these postures a little bit more comfortable. I have one blanket, but you can grab as many as you like. So typically I decide how many blankets to grab based on how open my body is feeling. So if you're feeling a little bit tighter today, maybe grab a few extra blankets for more support. And we're also going to use 2 blocks. If you don't have blocks, you can use books and stack them so they're about the same thickness. And if you don't have that, you can use pillows as well, but books are going to provide a lot more sturdiness and support in place of the block. So that's what I would recommend if you don't have blocks. So we are going to get started. So grab your props and I'll meet you on the mat. It can take a little bit of time to set up each of these postures and kind of get comfortable in them. So the first posture we're going to take is a restorative bridge. So if you're familiar with the pose, you can go there now. You're either going to use one or both of your blocks and your blanket if you'd like some extra support. So I'll set you guys up and then I'll show you a modification that you can take for any lower back pain. So to take a restorative bridge, we're going to come to lie on our backs. Make sure your one block and your blanket are both nearby. Your feet should be hips width distance apart, and you should be able to just ever so slightly graze your heels with your fingertips. So pressing down into the shoulder blades, into the feet, into the palms. You're going to lift the hips up to the sky, and you're going to place the block right underneath the sacrum. So that's that flat triangular bone at the base of your spine. So once you find that comfortable spot, you can take the block to any height you'd like. So obviously the lower the block, the less of a back bend it's going to be. But if you're more open, you might raise the block, get more of a back bend, and you can even raise it to the highest height if that's something that would feel good right now, but this is a lot, so I definitely don't recommend doing that in the early hours of the morning. I'm going to go ahead and put my blanket on top of my block just for a little bit more support. And then this is my sweet spot right here. You can do whatever you'd like with your arms, just let them go long at your sides. If you want a little bit more opening, you can take your arms long behind you or grab opposite elbows. And then if you're feeling any discomfort here in the lower back, we are going to come out of the pose, just move the blocks off to the side, and we're going to set ourselves up so that we have a block underneath our feet as well. And the block or the books underneath your feet should be the same height as the block underneath your sacrum. So this is a great pose to have someone set up for you if you have someone nearby to place the block underneath your feet. Otherwise, I'm just gonna kind of shimmy into this on my own. So you're gonna take your heels right on top of the block and then come to lie down. It's a little bit harder to lift here. If you want, you can kind of bring one foot to the ground. There we go. And then take the block right under the sacrum. And then take your feet on top of the block. And that will create a little less of like a crunching in the low back. If you have any low back pain, this might be a more comfortable option for you. I actually prefer my feet on the ground, so I'm going to take that option. Whenever you arrive, just settle in. And connect to your breath. You don't need anything going on in the mind right now. Just focus on your inhales and your exhales. Like I said, we'll be here for 1.5 to 2 minutes, so just settle in. You don't need to be completely still. If you need to fidget or move or fix something or adjust, please do so. The more comfort you can find in these postures, the more your body will be able to relax and you'll really reap the benefits of this practice. And that's enough for me. We're going to just breathe now. Take your last 2 to 3 breaths here. And when this posture starts to feel complete in your body, we'll gently make our way out of it. So if you had your heels up on that second block, you can bring them back down to the ground. Press into the heels and just gently lift the hips. Setting those props off to the side and gently rolling back down, starting with the upper back, the mid back, and finally the lower back. Take your feet out to the long edges of the mat and just let your knees knock in towards one another, bringing one hand to your heart, one hand to your belly. Just staying here for a few breaths just to counter that pose. When you're ready, you can roll over onto either your left or your right side, just coming into the fetal position briefly, and then pressing up to a seated position, setting up for a forward fold, Janu Shirshasana. So for this posture, I am going to elevate my hips just slightly. I'm going to fold my blanket up just like this, and I'm going to take it right underneath my sits bones. Bringing my right leg out to the top right corner of the mat and my left leg, my left foot to my inner right thigh. And then if you have lots of space really in between your left leg and the ground, you can always bring a pillow or a blanket underneath there, and that will ease any tension in the left knee. So for this pose, again, we're going to use our blocks, and you can stack them however you'd like. So start higher and then you can move them lower as you'd like. So usually we come into this forward fold, but this time we're just gonna kind of round forward, so you'll have to play with the positioning of your blocks. So I'm gonna come forward, and if I come like this, I can rest my chin on the top block. I prefer to kind of round my head and neck forward because I tend to hold a lot of tension in the upper back and I like to let that go. So I'm actually going to lower my block ever so slightly. And I'm going to bring my forehead to the block. And this is pretty good for me right now. If you want to go deeper, of course, you can always take the blocks to a lower height. But again, we're going to be here for 1 to 2 minutes. And the point here is to really gently open the body. So don't feel like you need to go to your deepest expression of this pose. So as you fold forward and just find a comfortable space, you can just wrap your hands around the blocks. And just breathe here. As you settle in and breathe deeply, you might find that you want to come out of this a little bit, or you might find that you do want to go a little bit deeper. So feel free to make those adjustments. If you do feel any tension in the body, imagine your breath flowing to that place, creating space. Take your final 2 to 3 breaths on this side. And as you come out of this, just be nice and gentle with the body, tucking the chin to the chest. And rolling up back to seated really slowly. And as we transition to the other side, remember that your body is not symmetrical. So as you take the left leg out long and take the right foot to the inner left thigh, this side is going to look and feel a little bit different from the last side. So you might use more props, less props. You might need a blanket underneath that knee or thigh this time. And just set up just like you did last time. Again, I always like to start at the highest height, and then I can always make my way down, just rounding forward. You can place a blanket on top of your block if that would be more comfortable. Just do whatever's comfortable with the hands. begin to breathe and know that you're not married to this spot. You can always go deeper or come out of this little by little as you start to connect more with the breath. Take your last 2 to 3 breaths on this side. As your body feels ready to come out of it, again, tuck your chin to your chest. Gently, slowly make your way back to a seated position. Maybe take a moment here, stretch out the neck, right ear to right shoulder, left ear to left shoulder. And then we'll come out of this. We're going to take one more forward fold. This time we'll take a wide-legged forward fold. So you can keep the blanket underneath the sits bones if that feels good. I'm actually going to remove it this time for myself. And just take your legs out to a V shape. So that V can be as wide or as narrow as is comfortable in your body today. So there's 2 options for this wide-legged forward fold. If you want this to be more of an opening for the low back, you're gonna kind of round forward like we did, and that's gonna open the top of the neck, the back of the neck rather, and it's gonna be a little bit gentler in the low back. If you want this to be more of a hamstring inner thigh opener, you're gonna keep your spine a little bit longer, hinging forward and kind of aiming to rest the chest on the blocks rather than the forehead. So do whatever one feels good, and if you'd like, you can take a little bit of both. So for this one, I like to kind of take my arms, grab opposite elbows, and just rest my chin on the block or the blanket. And we're using this support here to take some of the work out of this posture. So again, if you want to just round forward, you'll bring the blocks a little bit further out, and you'll just take your forehead to the blocks. Still going to open the inner thighs and the hamstrings. Again, it's just going to be a little bit gentler on the low back, and it's not going to be quite as intense as this will be, keeping the spine a little bit longer. So just find a posture, a variation of this posture that feels good for you. And again, just settle in, connect with your breath. Focus on the exhale. See if you can make that breath out a little bit longer each time. I tend to kind of hike up my shoulders in this pose to make sure you're relaxing them down the back. Take your final 2 to 3 breaths in this posture. And when your body feels ready, you'll gently come out of it. While we're in this position, we're going to take a little side body stretch. Bring your right forearm to your right thigh. You can use a blanket or a block to bring that thigh closer to you. And then just take a side body stretch to the right. Think about reaching that left hand past those right toes, not crunching down to grab them, lengthening the left side of the body, maybe even twisting the left side of the chest up towards the sky. And then we'll switch sides, bring the left forearm to the left thigh, maybe using that blanket, and take the right arm up and over the head, lengthening the right side of the body. And then gently make your way out. And since this is a morning class, I don't like to take a typical Shavasana because I will fall right back asleep. So we're gonna end class today in Child's Pose, a more supported variation of Child's Pose. So if you have pillows, I actually prefer a pillow to a blanket in this posture. You can take the pillow right in between your legs, take your big toes to touch and your knees out wide. And then that pillow or blanket will go in between the knees. And you're just gonna come down into your child's pose, just using that blanket or pillow as support. So the blanket isn't quite as thick, so it's not gonna be as much support. That's why I recommend using like a pillow from your bed instead. But as you come into this, you can also use your blocks. Take your elbows to the blocks and take your hands to prayer at the base of the neck, stretching out the triceps, sinking the chest towards the ground. If you have an additional blanket or you're not using your blanket, you can also always take the blanket in between the seat and the heels, creating a little bit more padding there and a little bit more of a connection between the butt and the heels. So wherever you are, just find a variation that works for you. I'm gonna fold out my blanket for a little bit more support and just settle in. And this is our last posture. So if you're taking this class in the morning, as I typically do, you might use your time in this child's pose to set your intention for the day. Think of a word or a phrase that you'd like to focus on. You might start to take larger exhales out the mouth, using your breath to wake up the body. You can pause the video and stay in this child's pose for as long as you'd like. Whenever you're ready, you can gently make your way out of it, just as we did the other poses, really taking your time. Again, stay as long as you'd like, but when you're ready to start your day, hopefully you feel a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more open. Thank you so much for practicing with me. Namaste.